Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Naurin. In today's bulletin, we will present trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Biden-McCarthy meet face-to-face on debt crisis worries. Republicans vote to remove Representative Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. At Nicole's funeral, Black America's grief on public display. After Tyre Nichols' funeral, Biden faces pressure on policing. Biden urges unity at prayer breakfast under new management. Joe Biden, Bill Clinton mark 3 decades of Family Leave Act. Biden administration recommends major Alaska oil project. Frustrated Texans endure winter storm with no power heat. Grammys to honor Loretta Lynn take off McVie. Eye drops linked to US drug-resistant bacteria outbreak. US, Philippines agree to larger American military presence. Biden's top economic aide leaving White House. Russia hits civilian targets anew, EU officials visit Kiev. India's Adani scraps 2.5 billion share sale after fraud claims. Australia is removing British monarchy from its banknotes. In Greece, artist strike closes theaters, music schools. Iranian film director goes on hunger strike in prison. Hall of Fame NFL executive Bobby Beathard dies at 86. And Dylan Moore, Mariners agree to nearly $8.9 million deal. Now news in detail. President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy met face-to-face Wednesday for more than an hour of highly anticipated budget talks. A good first meeting, the new Republican leader said, but expectations were low for quick progress as GOP lawmakers pushed for steep cuts in a deal to prevent a national debt limit crisis. Biden has resisted direct spending negotiations linked to vital action raising the nation's legal debt ceiling, warning against potentially throwing the economy into chaos. McCarthy had all but invited himself to the White House to start the conversation before a summer date deadline, and he emerged saying the meeting went better than expected. The two agreed to meet again, and the speaker said he expected to hear from Biden soon. No agreement, no promises except we will continue this conversation, McCarthy told reporters outside the White House. He said he told the president he would not raise the debt ceiling without concessions from Democrats. The White House said the president and the speaker agreed to continue the conversation. The president made clear that it is their shared duty to not allow a catastrophic default, the White House said. House Republicans on Thursday voted to oust Representative Ilhan Omar, Democrat of Minnesota, from the Foreign Affairs Committee, the latest skirmish in a long-running partisan battle over committee assignments. Speaker Kevin McCarthy initially had faced a handful of GOP defections, but by Thursday he and his team had whipped GOP members back in line, and 218 Republicans voted to back the resolution condemning Omar for past anti-Semitic comments and removing her from the committee. One Republican representative, Dave Joyce, representative of Ohio, a senior member of the Ethics Committee, voted present. All 211 Democrats unified behind Omar, who gave an emotional and defiant floor speech before the vote that left many of her colleagues in tears. There is this idea that you are a suspect if you are an immigrant or if you are from certain parts of the world or a certain skin tone or a Muslim. It is no accident that members of the Republican Party accused the first black president, Barack Obama, of being a secret Muslim. Omar said, "Well, I am Muslim," she added. "I am an immigrant and, interestingly, from Africa. Is anyone surprised that I am being targeted? Is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy, or that they see me as a powerful voice that needs to be silenced?" Last week, several Republicans voiced opposition to the GOP taking action against Omar, threatening to derail the vote given their new razor-thin majority. But this week, those defectors began to fall in line. On Tuesday, Representative Victoria Spurs of Indiana flipped her vote to yes after meeting with McCarthy and securing language in the Omar resolution that would give lawmakers a chance to appeal removal from committees. The sound of the djembe drums started as a low tremble and grew more distinct as the musicians drew closer to the hundreds gathered inside the Memphis church. "We love you, Tyre," the drummers chanted, referring to Tyre Nichols, a 29-year-old black man whose beating by 5 police officers led to his death and this funeral on the first day of Black History Month. By the time the procession reached Nichols' black casket draped in a large white bouquet, the congregation in the Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church was on its feet shouting the chant in unison. Some raised clenched fists, others let out screams of grief. Many grabbed tissues to dab at tears. All of it streamed live on television. The funeral on Wednesday had all the hallmarks of what's known as a homegoing service in Black American communities: comforting gospel hymns, remembrances from loved ones, and a stirring eulogy from a clergyman. But in addition to offering an outlet for the private mourning of Nichols' family and friends, this ritual was also public and political. It was a venue to air the shared grief of Black Americans and to once again to call for leaders to address an epidemic of police violence so that this time might be different. When Vice President Kamala Harris was called to the pulpit at the funeral for Tyre Nichols, she said the White House would settle for nothing less than ambitious federal legislation to crack down on police brutality. "We should not delay, and we will not be denied," Harris said to applause in Memphis, Tennessee. "It is non-negotiable." Black in Washington, however, progress appears difficult, if not unlikely. Bipartisan efforts to reach an agreement on policing legislation stalled more than a year ago, and President Joe Biden ended up instead signing an executive order named for George Floyd, whose murder at the hands of Minneapolis police set off nationwide protest nearly 3 years ago. Now, with new killing in the headlines, Biden and Harris met with members of the Congressional Black Caucus on Thursday to explore whether it's possible to get legislation back on track. "I am working to make sure that we have a clear plan," said Representative Stephen Horsford of Nevada, who chairs the caucus. The White House is facing fresh pressure to advance the issue, and even some political allies are frustrated with what they view as excess caution from Biden. President Joe Biden delivered a message of unity at the National Prayer Breakfast on Thursday, the first time the annual event has been held since its leadership and structure were overhauled to distance it from a controversial private religious group. In our politics and in our lives, we too often see each other as opponents and not competitors. We see each other as enemies, not neighbors, Biden said. And as tough as these times have been, if we look closer, we see the strength, the determination that has long defined America. The breakfast was held at the Capitol's Visitor Center, and the auditorium's 450 seats were packed with members of Congress, government officials, and others. Every president since Dwight D. Eisenhower has spoken at the breakfast, which in past years has been attended by thousands. For decades, the event was overseen by the International Foundation, a Christian organization that has drawn increasing scrutiny over the years. Now the event is run by the National Prayer Breakfast Foundation, a new group led by former members of Congress. The International Foundation held its own event at a nearby hotel, where Biden's speech was being watched remotely. President Joe Biden is playing host to former President Bill Clinton to mark the 30th anniversary of the Family and Medical Leave Act, the first piece of legislation that the 42nd president signed into law after taking office in 1993. Biden and Clinton took part in an event Thursday at the White House to put the spotlight on legislation that guaranteed many American workers up to 12 unpaid weeks off to recover from major illness or childbirth or to take care of sick family members. Clinton signed the bill into law on February 5, 1993. Biden championed but failed to win support for paid leave for workers in 2021. On Thursday, he signed a memorandum that calls on heads of federal agencies to support access to unpaid family and medical leave for federal workers in their first year on the job. Workers aren't entitled to unpaid leave under the law until they have been employed for a year. The president is also directing the Office of Personnel Management to provide recommendations on developing policies so workers can get paid and unpaid leave to seek safety or recover from domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. Such situations are not covered by the family leave law. The Biden administration released a long-awaited study Wednesday that recommends allowing a major oil development on Alaska's North Slope that supporters say could boost U.S. energy security, but that climate activists decry as a carbon bomb. The move, while not final, drew immediate anger from environmentalists who saw it as a betrayal of the president's pledges to reduce carbon emissions and promote clean energy sources. ConocoPhillips Alaska had proposed 5 drilling sites as part of its Willow project, and the approach listed as the preferred alternative by the U.S. Bureau of Land Management in the report calls for up to 3 drill sites initially. Even as the land agency released its report, the U.S. Interior Department said in a separate statement that it has substantial concerns about the project and the report's preferred alternative, including direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions and impact to wildlife and Alaska Native subsistence. Thousands of frustrated Texans shivered in their homes Thursday after more than a day without power, including many in the state capital, as an icy winter storm that has been blamed for at least 10 traffic deaths lingered across much of the southern U.S. A warming trend was expected to bring some relief later Thursday, just in time for an Arctic front to drop from Canada and threaten northern states, and in particular those in New England, with the coldest weather in decades. Wind chills could dive lower than -50. Across Texas, 430,000 customers lacked power Thursday, according to poweroutage.us. But the failures were most widespread in Austin, where frustration mounted among more than 156,000 customers over 24 hours after their electricity went out, which for many also meant their hit. Power failures have affected about 30% of customers in the city of nearly a million at any given time since Wednesday. For many Texans, it was the second time in 3 years that a February freeze. Temperatures were in the 30s Thursday with wind chills below freezing, caused prolonged outages and uncertainty over when the lights would come back on. The Grammys will pay homage to lives of Loretta Lynn, Migos rapper Takeoff, and Christine McVie with star-studded performances during Sunday's ceremony. The Recording Academy announced Wednesday that the ceremony will honor the three musicians who died last year with special performances during its In Memoriam segment. Casey Musgraves will perform Coal Miner's Daughter in tribute to Lynn. Quavo and the Maverick City Music will hit the stage to honor his nephew Takeoff with the song Without You. Sheryl Crow, Mick Fleetwood, and Bonnie Raitt will collaborate to perform Songbird to remember McVie. The Academy also announced Wednesday that presenters will include First Lady Jill Biden, Viola Davis, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Billy Crystal, James Corden, Olivia Rodrigo, and Cardi B. Trevor Noah will return for a third time to host the ceremony, which will air live from Crypto.com Arena on Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern. The ceremony will include performances by Harry Styles, Bad Bunny, Mary J. Blige, Sam Smith, Lizzo, Luke Combs, and Steve Lacy. US health officials are advising people to stop using over-the-counter eye drops that have been linked to an outbreak of drug-resistant infections. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Wednesday night sent a health alert to physicians, saying the outbreak includes at least 55 people in 12 states. One died. Disease investigators have linked the infections, including some found in blood, urine, and lungs, to Ezekiel artificial tears. Many of the patients said they had used the product, which is a lubricant used to treat irritation and dryness. The infections were all caused by a bacteria called Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Investigators detected that kind of bacteria in open Ezekiel bottles, but further testing was underway to see if the strains matched. Ezekiel said it is not aware of any evidence definitively linking the outbreak to the product, but that it has stopped distributing the eye drops. It also has a notice on its website urging consumers to stop using the drops. The United States and the Philippines on Thursday announced plans to expand America's military presence in the Southeast Asian nation, with access to 4 more bases as they seek to deter China's increasingly aggressive actions toward Taiwan and in the disputed South China Sea. The agreement was reached as U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was in the country for talks about deploying U.S. forces and weapons in more Philippine military camps. In a joint announcement by the Philippines and the U.S., the two said they had decided to accelerate the full implementation of their so-called Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, which aims to support combined training, exercises, and interoperability. As part of the agreement, the U.S. has allocated $82 million toward infrastructure improvements at 5 current EDCA sites and expand its military presence to 4 new sites in strategic areas of the country, according to the statement. Austin arrived in the Philippines on Tuesday from South Korea, where he said the U.S. would increase its deployment of advanced weapons such as fighter jets and bombers to the Korean Peninsula to bolster joint training with South Korean forces in response to North Korea's growing nuclear threat. President Joe Biden's top economic advisor, Brian Deese, is leaving his post. Biden said Thursday in a statement that Deese would step down as director of the White House National Economic Council. That position had him coordinating policy across the government and negotiating with Congress on coronavirus aid, the budget, infrastructure, the tax code, clean energy incentives, investments in computer chip plants, and other measures that the president counts as key victories. Brian has a unique ability to translate complex policy challenges into concrete actions that improve the lives of American people, Biden said. He has helped steer my economic vision into reality and manage the transition of our historic economic recovery to steady and stable growth. It was the second major departure in recent weeks, as White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain is also leaving and being succeeded by Jeff Zients, who previously led the administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now it's time for global updates. Russian missiles hit residential areas in an eastern Ukrainian city Thursday for the second time in 24 hours, while top European Union officials held talks with the government in Kiev as the war with Russia approaches its one-year milestone. The latest strikes in Kramatorsk came as rescue crews searched for survivors in the rubble of an apartment building hit late Wednesday by a Russian missile that killed at least 3 people and wounded 21 others. At least one more victim was thought to be under the debris, Ukraine's presidential office said. Kramatorsk again shattered by explosions. The Russians made 2 more rocket strikes, regional governor Pavlo Kirilenko wrote in a Telegram post. He said at least 5 civilians were wounded in the latest strikes, which hit residential buildings as well as a children's clinic and a school in the heart of the city. Kramatorsk Mayor Alexander Honcharenko urged residents to stay in shelters. Kramatorsk is a major hub for the Ukrainian military in the east. Indian conglomerate Adani Enterprises called off its 2.5 billion share offering after it lost tens of billions of dollars in market value due to fraud claims by a US-based short-selling firm. Billionaire Gautam Adani's company said Thursday it will review its plans for raising capital after it cancelled the share sale late Wednesday, citing market volatility. Adani's stocks sank after Hindenburg Research, which has a track record of sending stock prices of its targets tumbling, accused the group of brazen stock market manipulation and accounting fraud, among other financial abuses. The share offering had drawn nearly 51 million bids, exceeding the 45.5 million offered to the public. It was seen as a crucial test of investor confidence in Adani, whose net worth had shot up about 2,000% in recent years as share prices for his listed companies soared. Australia is removing the British monarchy from its banknotes. The nation's central bank said Thursday its new $5 bill would feature an indigenous design rather than an image of King Charles III. But the king is still expected to appear on coins that currently bear the image of the late Queen Elizabeth. The $5 bill was Australia's only remaining banknote to still feature an image of the monarch. The bank said the decision followed consultation with the centre-left Labour Party government, which supported the change. Opponents say the move is politically motivated. The British monarch remains Australia's head of state, although these days that role is largely symbolic. Like many former British colonies, Australia is debating to what extent it should retain its constitutional ties to Britain. Australia's Reserve Bank said the new $5 bill would feature a design to replace the portrait of the Queen, who died last year. The bank said the move would honor the culture and history of the first Australians. Performing artists and art students, some banging drums, playing trumpets, and dressed in clown outfits, gathered outside Greece's parliament Thursday during a strike that closed theatres, halted TV shoots, and disrupted art school classes. More than 2,000 people took part in the demonstration on the second day of a 48-hour strike to protest changes in a government labor qualification system used to set wage scales and for civil service recruitment. People have spent years on the job, teaching and in performance roles, and suddenly they do not know what their qualifications are owed. Singer Argiro Caparo, who heads one of the associations organizing the protest, told the AP. Strike organizers say they want the government to pause the reforms until a general election is held sometime before the summer. The center-right government says it wants to streamline government hiring procedures before the elections. An Iranian director who was arrested last summer, weeks before his latest film was released to widespread acclaim, has gone on hunger strike to protest his continued detention amid more than 4 months of anti-government protests. Jafar Panahi, whose films have thrilled critics and won numerous international prizes, issued a statement saying he would refuse food or medicine starting Wednesday in protest against the extra-legal and inhuman behavior of the judicial and security apparatus. He is among a number of Iranian artists, sports figures, and other celebrities who have been detained after speaking out against Iran's theocracy. Such arrests have become increasingly frequent since nationwide protests broke out in September over the death of a young woman in police custody. Panahi was sentenced to 6 years in prison in 2011 on charges of producing anti-government propaganda, but the sentence was never carried out. Banned from both travel and filmmaking, he continued to make underground films that were released abroad to great acclaim. He was arrested in July when he went to the Tehran prosecutor's office to inquire about the arrests of 2 other Iranian filmmakers. A judge later ruled that he must serve the earlier sentence. Now it's time for business news. New York stock close price is 16,122.58. The NYSE composite is increased by 1.33 points or 0.01%. Tokyo stock close price is 27,402.05. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 55.17 points or 0.20%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,285.6705. The Shanghai Composite Index is increased by 0.75 points or 0.02%. Hong Kong stock close price is 21,958.36. The Hang Seng Index is decreased by 113.82 points or 0.52%. Bombay stock close price is 59,932.24. The Sensex index is increased by 224.16 points or 0.38%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. Bobby Beathard, the architect of 4 Super Bowl winning teams with 2 different organizations during his lengthy tenure in football, has died. He was 86. A spokesperson for the Washington Commanders said Beathard's family told the team he died Monday at his home in Franklin, Tennessee, less than a week after his 86th birthday. A cause of death was not immediately available. Beathard was director of player personnel for 2 of the NFL championships by Miami in the 1970s and served as general manager for 2 more by Washington in the 80s. He also scouted for Kansas City when the Chiefs won the American Football League title and made Super Bowl I following the 1966 season, and was GM with San Diego when the Chargers got there in the mid-1990s. Part of 7 teams that made the Super Bowl during his lengthy front office career, Beathard was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2018. Washington added him to the organization's Ring of Honor in 2016. Dylan Moore and the Seattle Mariners have agreed to a 3-year contract worth $8.875 million avoiding a salary arbitration hearing. Two people familiar with the deal told the Associated Press. The people spoke on condition of anonymity Wednesday night because the agreement, first reported by ESPN, had not been announced. Moore had asked for a raise from $1.35 million to $2.25 million, and the Mariners had offered $1.9 million when proposed arbitration figures were exchanged on January 13. The 30-year-old utility man would have been eligible for free agency after the 2024 World Series, but the new agreement pushes that back a year. Moore played every position except pitcher and catcher last year, including 39 games in right field, 7 in center, 18 in left, 2 at third base, 26 at shortstop, 12 at second, 8 at first, and 3 at designated hitter. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest updates. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jadoo TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago PD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.